I never thought my father would lock me in the basement on the night of his most important gala. But there I was, sitting on the cold concrete floor in my childhood prison, listening to champagne glasses clinking above my head while 100 wealthy guests celebrated a charity I'd been funding with my own secret millions for years. What my father didn't know was that my mother, the woman he told everyone died in a car accident 10 years ago, was about to ring the doorbell with 3 FBI agents behind her. And I was about to make sure his perfect life crumbled on live television in front of everyone who ever believed his lies. If you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to like this video and watch till the end. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. My name is Emma Hartford, and I'm 28 years old. For most of my life, I've been invisible. Not literally, of course, but in every way that mattered to my father, Richard Hartford. I might as well have been a ghost haunting the corners of our massive estate. He never looked at me the way fathers are supposed to look at their daughters. There was no warmth, no pride, no love. Just cold calculation and disappointment that I wasn't the son he wanted to carry on his legacy. The basement had always been my punishment chamber. When I was 7 and accidentally spilled juice on his important documents, he locked me down there for 6 hours. When I was 12 and got a B instead of an A in math, another night in the darkness. When I was 16 and dared to question why he spoke so cruelly to our housekeeper, he didn't let me out until I apologized for embarrassing him. The basement was where Richard Hartford sent his disappointments, and I was his biggest one. But tonight was different. Tonight, I was 28 years old, financially independent, and I had chosen to stay in this house for one reason only: revenge. The kind of revenge that takes years to plan, that requires patience and precision, that demands you become stronger than the person who broke you. I'd spent the last 5 years building my own fortune through tech investments my father knew nothing about. While he thought I was wasting my time on my laptop in my room, I was turning a $20,000 inheritance from my grandmother into $12 million. That money became my weapon. And the Hartford Foundation for Children's Education, my father's pride and joy, the charity that made him look like a philanthropist and humanitarian to the world, had been receiving anonymous donations of $50,000 to $100,000 every few months for the past 3 years. My donations. My money keeping his reputation alive. And he had no idea. The gala happening above me right now was supposed to be the foundation's biggest night. 200 guests, live streaming on social media, a keynote speech from my father about his dedication to helping underprivileged children get access to quality education. The irony made me sick. This was a man who'd emotionally abused his own daughter for decades, who destroyed my mother's life and made me believe she was dead, who manipulated and controlled everyone around him to maintain his image of perfection. But tonight, that image was going to shatter. I checked my phone. 8:47 p.m. The live stream had started 17 minutes ago. I could see it on my screen, the camera panning across the beautifully decorated ballroom, the designer dresses, the expensive suits, the fake smiles. My father stood at the center of it all in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, his silver hair perfectly styled, his practiced smile making everyone believe he was exactly what he pretended to be, a good man. I texted Sarah, my best friend and the only person who knew everything. Status? 3 dots appeared immediately. Your mom just pulled up. FBI is with her. They're at the front door now. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was really happening. After 10 years of thinking my mother was dead, after a decade of grieving and trauma and believing my father's lies, I'd discovered the truth 6 months ago. My mother, Catherine Hartford, was alive. She'd been in witness protection, hiding from my father, who'd threatened to kill her if she ever tried to contact me. She'd left to save both of us, working with federal investigators who'd been building a case against my father's actual business, a money laundering operation disguised as commercial real estate development. The Hartford Foundation was clean, that was the genius of it. The foundation was real charity, legitimate, praised by everyone. It's what made my father untouchable. Who would suspect a man who gave millions to children's education? But underneath that shining surface, Richard Hartford was moving money for some very dangerous people, and my mother had evidence that would put him away for 20 years. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, quick, angry. The basement door flew open, light flooding down, and my father's silhouette appeared at the top. Emma. His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. What the hell have you done? I stood up slowly, brushing dust off my black dress. I'd dressed for this moment, knowing I'd end up down here. I don't know what you're talking about, Dad. You locked me in the basement, remember? I've been sitting here in the dark while you play philanthropist upstairs. He descended the stairs, each step deliberate. In the dim light, his face looked almost demonic, all hard angles and shadows. Don't play games with me. Someone tipped off the FBI. Someone told them to come here tonight. And I know it was you. The FBI is here? I kept my voice innocent, curious. Why would the FBI come to a charity gala? His hand shot out and grabbed my arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You think you're smart? You think you can destroy me? I made you. Everything you have, everything you are, exists because I allow it. I looked him directly in the eyes, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. You didn't make me. You tried to break me. There's a difference. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. He'd never heard me talk back like this, never seen this version of his daughter who'd grown stronger in the shadows of his abuse. You have no idea what you've done, he hissed. No idea what kind of people you're messing with. If you've brought the FBI here, if you've compromised my business, you've signed your own death warrant. Is that a threat, Dad? Because that sounds like a threat. You might want to be careful about threatening me right now. He released my arm and pulled out his phone, typing frantically. I'm handling this. Stay down here and stay quiet. When this is over, we're going to have a very serious conversation about your future. My future? I laughed, and it echoed off the concrete walls. You mean the future where you continue to control every aspect of my life? Where I pretend to be your devoted daughter while you treat me like garbage? That future? His phone buzzed. He read something that made his face go pale. No. No, no, no. What's wrong, Dad? I asked sweetly. Something happening upstairs you didn't plan for? He turned and ran up the stairs, taking them two at a time. He didn't bother locking the door behind him. Why would he? In his mind, I was still the scared little girl who stayed in the basement until he decided to let her out. But that girl didn't exist anymore. I climbed the stairs slowly, my heels clicking on each step. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Your mom just walked into the ballroom. It's chaos. Your dad looks like he's seen a ghost. Because he basically has. I reached the top of the stairs and moved through the hallway toward the ballroom. I could hear the commotion now, voices raised in confusion, someone shouting questions. The live stream was still going. Thousands of people were watching this unfold in real time. Perfect. I smoothed down my dress and walked into the ballroom. The scene was exactly what I'd imagined. My father stood frozen in the center of the room, his face drained of all color. My mother, looking older but strong and alive and real, stood near the entrance with 3 FBI agents in suits flanking her. Every single guest had turned to watch, champagne glasses forgotten, conversations died mid-sentence. And in the corner, the live stream camera was capturing everything. My mother's eyes found mine across the room. 10 years of grief, loss, and love passed between us in that single look. Tears streamed down her face. Emma, she whispered, but in the shocked silence of the ballroom, everyone heard it. Mom, I said, my voice breaking on the word. You're alive. The room erupted. Guests started shouting questions. Phones came out everywhere, recording, posting, sharing. The live stream chat was probably exploding right now. My father looked back and forth between me and my mother, his carefully constructed world crumbling in real time. "Catherine," he said, his voice weak. "But you're dead. You died." "The car accident." "There was no accident, Richard." My mother's voice was steady, strong. "You know that. You've always known that." One of the FBI agents stepped forward, holding up his badge. "Richard Hartford, I'm Special Agent Martinez. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and witness intimidation. You have the right to remain silent." "This is insane," my father shouted, finding his voice. He looked around at his guests, at the cameras, his PR instincts kicking in. "This is a setup. My daughter and my supposedly dead wife have conspired to ruin me. I don't know what lies they've told you, but I am innocent. I have done nothing but give back to this community. The Hartford Foundation has helped thousands of children. The Hartford Foundation is legitimate," I said loudly, walking toward the center of the room. All eyes turned to me. "That's true. But it's also a beautiful cover for your real business, isn't it, Dad? All those commercial properties you develop? All that money flowing through your accounts? You're not just a real estate developer. You're a money launderer. And Mom had evidence of it 10 years ago. That's why you threatened to kill her if she didn't disappear. That's why you told me she died. That's why you've kept me under your control my entire life, because you were afraid I'd find out the truth." The gasps from the crowd were audible. Phones were everywhere now, recording every word. The live stream chat must have been absolutely insane. My father's mask was slipping. The charming philanthropist was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating and dangerous. "You stupid girl," he said quietly. "You have no idea what you've done. No idea who you've crossed. Actually, I know exactly what I've done." I pulled out my phone and held it up. "For the past 6 months, since I found out Mom was alive, I've been working with the FBI. I've been recording our conversations. I've been documenting everything. Every threat you've made, every time you've locked me in the basement, every cruel word. And 3 weeks ago, when you got drunk and told me about the $20 million you moved last quarter through your shell corporations, I recorded that too." I hit play on my phone. My father's voice filled the ballroom, slurred with alcohol but perfectly clear. "You want to know the real secret to success, Emma? It's not working hard. It's knowing how to move money without anyone asking questions. 20 million last quarter alone, and nobody suspects a thing because I'm the great Richard Hartford, philanthropist and humanitarian." The recording continued for another 30 seconds, my father drunkenly bragging about his schemes, about the people he worked with, about how easy it was to fool everyone. When it ended, the silence in the ballroom was deafening. "That recording has been given to the FBI," I said. "Along with bank statements, emails, and testimony from 3 of your former employees who agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity. It's over, Dad. Everything you built on lies and manipulation and cruelty is over." Special Agent Martinez moved forward with handcuffs. "Richard Hartford, you're under arrest." My father's eyes found mine, and in them I saw pure hatred. "You're my daughter," he spat. "How could you betray your own father?" "You betrayed me every single day of my life," I said quietly. "You made me believe my mother was dead. You locked me in basements. You made me feel worthless and invisible. You used me, controlled me, and destroyed any chance I had at a normal childhood. So no, Dad. I didn't betray you. I survived you. And now I'm making sure you can never hurt anyone else the way you hurt me and Mom." The agents cuffed him. As they led him away, he tried one more time to spin the narrative, shouting to his guests, to the cameras. "This is a lie. I'm being framed. Emma has been disturbed since she was a child. She needs help. Don't believe her lies. But no one was listening. The evidence was too clear. The recording was damning. And the sight of my supposedly dead mother standing alive in the room made it impossible for anyone to believe his version of events anymore. As soon as my father was taken out, my mother rushed toward me. We met in the middle of the ballroom and she pulled me into her arms, holding me tight the way I'd dreamed about for 10 years. She smelled like lavender and coffee, exactly how I remembered. Her tears soaked into my shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry I left you with him. I thought I was protecting you. He said if I ever came back, he'd kill both of us. I thought if I stayed away, you'd be safe." "I know, Mom," I whispered. "I know. The FBI explained everything. You did what you had to do." We held each other while the crowd slowly began to process what had just happened. Some guests were leaving, uncomfortable with the drama. Others stayed, too shocked to move. The live stream was still running. Sarah gave me a thumbs up from across the room. One of the older women, a major donor to the foundation, approached us hesitantly. "Emma, dear, I don't understand. If your father was laundering money, does that mean the foundation is compromised? What happens to all the children we've been helping?" I gently pulled away from my mother and turned to address the crowd. More people gathered around to listen. "The Hartford Foundation is completely legitimate," I said clearly. "Every dollar donated to the foundation has gone exactly where it was supposed to go. The FBI has confirmed this. My father kept his criminal activities completely separate from the charity work specifically so the foundation could never be used as evidence against him. It was his shield, his cover, his way of maintaining a perfect public image while committing crimes behind the scenes." "But who will run the foundation now?" someone else asked. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been planning for months. "I will. Along with my mother and a new board of directors that actually cares about transparency and ethics. I've already contacted the current board members and offered them the choice to stay on under new leadership or resign. Most have chosen to resign." "But how can you fund it?" the older woman asked. "Your father was the primary donor." "No, he wasn't." I smiled slightly. "For the past 3 years, the foundation's largest donor has been anonymous. Donations of $50,000 to $100,000 every few months, totaling over $2 million. That donor was me. I've been funding my father's charity with my own money, money I made through tech investments, money he knew nothing about. And I'm going to continue funding it. In fact, I'm increasing my donations. The Hartford Foundation will be renamed the Catherine Hartford Foundation for Children's Education, after my mother. And it will continue to help children get access to quality education, but this time without any connection to criminals or abusers." The crowd murmured in surprise. My mother stared at me, tears still streaming down her face. "Emma, you did all that?" "I had to do something good with the money," I said. "And I wanted to make sure that when Dad finally fell, the kids who depended on the foundation wouldn't suffer. They've done nothing wrong. They deserve their chance at education." Sarah appeared at my side, handing me a glass of water. "You need to hydrate after that mic drop," she whispered. I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. The tension that had been coiled in my chest for months, years, maybe my entire life, was finally releasing. But then I saw Detective Wallace, one of the FBI agents who'd been working on my father's case, approaching with a concerned expression. "Emma, we need to talk," she said quietly. "Somewhere private." My stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "Not here." She glanced at the crowd, at the cameras still recording. "Please." My mother and I followed Detective Wallace out of the ballroom and into my father's study. Sarah came too, refusing to leave my side. Detective Wallace closed the door and turned to face us with a grim expression. "Your father made a phone call from the police car," she said. "We don't know who he called yet, but he said something that concerns us. He said, the daughter knows everything. Handle it." The air left my lungs. Handle it? What does that mean? "We think he's ordered a hit on you, Emma. The people your father has been laundering money for are not the kind of people who forgive or forget. If they think you know enough to compromise their operations, they'll kill her," my mother finished, her face going pale. Oh God. Emma, this is exactly what I was afraid of. This is why I stayed away. Richard works with dangerous people. Organized crime. Drug cartels. People who murder witnesses. "We're arranging protection for both of you," Detective Wallace said quickly. "But I need you to understand how serious this is. These people have resources. They have connections. The fact that your father was arrested tonight and everything was broadcast on live stream means they know their operation is compromised. They'll be scrambling to cover their tracks, and that includes eliminating anyone who could testify against them." "But I don't know anything about his partners," I protested. "I recorded my father talking about money laundering, but I don't know names or faces or." "They don't know that," Detective Wallace interrupted. "All they know is that you worked with the FBI to bring down your father. That makes you a threat. And they eliminate threats." Sarah grabbed my hand. "So what do we do? Emma can't just hide forever. She has a life." The foundation will have to wait," Detective Wallace said firmly. "Right now, we need to get both Emma and Catherine into protective custody until we can assess the full scope of the threat." "No." The word came out of my mouth before I'd fully thought it through. "No, I'm not hiding. I've spent my entire life being afraid of my father. I'm not going to spend the rest of it being afraid of his associates. There has to be another way." "Emma," my mother started. "Mom, you spent 10 years in witness protection. 10 years away from me, from your life, from everything you loved. I won't do that. I can't do that. We just got you back." Detective Wallace studied me carefully. "There might be another option, but it's risky. We've been trying to build a case against the people at the top of this operation for years. Your father was a mid-level player, important but not the head of the snake. If you were willing to work with us, to help us identify and build cases against the people your father worked with, we could offer you protection while also actively dismantling the organization. It would be dangerous. It would require you to be bait, essentially. But it would also mean you're not just hiding, you're fighting back." "Absolutely not," my mother said immediately. "You are not using my daughter as bait. Haven't we sacrificed enough for this case?" "It's not your decision, Mom," I said softly. "It's mine." "Emma, please," I turned to Detective Wallace. "What exactly would this involve?" "Emma, no," Sarah said. "This is crazy. You've already done enough. You brought down your father. You exposed his crimes. Let the FBI do their job now." But I was already shaking my head. "You heard what Detective Wallace said. These people will come after me anyway. At least this way, I'm not just running. I'm taking them down too. I'm finishing what we started. It would involve wearing a wire, potentially meeting with some of your father's associates if they reach out to you, helping us gather evidence," Detective Wallace explained. "We'd have agents watching you at all times. But there's always risk. These are sophisticated criminals. If they discover you're working with us, the consequences would be severe." "They're already coming after me," I pointed out. "The only difference is whether I'm a passive victim or an active participant in their downfall." My mother was crying again. "I can't lose you. Not after I just got you back." I pulled her into my arms. "You won't lose me. I'm stronger than you think. I survived Dad for 28 years. I can survive this too. Your father broke you down and controlled you, my mother said into my shoulder. These people will just kill you. Then we make sure they don't get the chance. I looked at Detective Wallace. I'll do it. I'll help you build your case. But I have conditions. Name them. 1. My mother stays in protective custody until this is over. I need to know she's completely safe. Agreed. 2. Sarah gets protection too. She knows too much, and if they come after me, they might go after her to get to me. We can arrange that. 3. The Catherine Hartford Foundation continues operating. I don't care if I have to run it remotely or through representatives, but those kids don't stop getting help because of this mess. Detective Wallace nodded slowly. We can work with that. Anything else? Yeah. I want everything. I want every single person my father worked with arrested and prosecuted. I want the entire organization dismantled. And I want my father to know that I'm the one who did it. Not just him, but everyone he was protecting. I want him to watch from prison as I destroy everything he built. A slow smile spread across Detective Wallace's face. I think we can definitely work with that. The next 3 weeks were the strangest of my life. I moved into a safe house with 24-hour security. My phone was monitored. Every email I sent was copied to the FBI. I couldn't go anywhere without at least 2 agents trailing me. It felt claustrophobic and terrifying and strangely empowering all at once. My father's arrest had made national news. The Hartford Foundation scandal, as the media called it, was everywhere. But most of the coverage focused on the dramatic reunion between me and my supposedly dead mother, and on my revelation that I'd been the foundation's largest anonymous donor. Public opinion was largely on my side. I was the brave daughter who'd exposed her criminal father. The media loved that narrative. What they didn't know was that I was now actively working to bring down an entire criminal organization. The first contact came 8 days after my father's arrest. An unknown number called my monitored phone at 2 in the morning. I was instructed to answer but to be careful, to not reveal I was working with law enforcement. Hello? I said, my voice groggy like I'd actually been asleep. Emma Hartford? The voice was male, smooth, professional. Who is this? A friend of your father's. He's asked me to reach out to you regarding some business matters. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The FBI was recording every word. My father is in jail. Whatever business he had is over. On the contrary, Miss Hartford. Your father's business continues, with or without him. And there are certain parties who are very concerned about what you might know. What you might have shared with law enforcement. I don't know anything about his business. I recorded him confessing to money laundering and turned it over to the FBI. That's it. We'd like to verify that in person. Is that a threat? It's an invitation. Meet with me tomorrow evening. There's a restaurant downtown, Mancini's. 8 p.m. Come alone. We just want to talk, to ensure there are no misunderstandings that might put anyone in an uncomfortable position. The call ended before I could respond. Detective Wallace was in my safe house within minutes, listening to the recording. Mancini's is a known meeting place for organized crime figures. This is good. They're reaching out, which means they're worried. They want to assess how much of a threat you are. And I'm supposed to meet with them and just, what? Convince them I don't know anything? You're supposed to meet with them while wearing a wire and gathering evidence. This is exactly what we hoped would happen. They're coming to you. What if they kill me right there in the restaurant? They won't. Too public. Too risky. This meeting is about information gathering for them. They want to see if you know more than what you've publicly revealed. Your job is to seem nervous, cooperative, maybe even a little naive. Let them think they can scare you into silence. I spent the entire next day preparing with the FBI. They coached me on what to say, how to act, what topics to steer toward or away from. They fitted me with a wire so sophisticated I couldn't even tell I was wearing it. They showed me the agents who would be in the restaurant, undercover, watching my back. If anything goes wrong, Detective Wallace said, if you feel unsafe for even a second, you touch your right ear twice. That's the signal. We'll move in immediately. By the time 8 p.m. arrived, my nerves were completely shot. Sarah had wanted to come with me, but that was impossible. My mother had called from her safe house, begging me not to do this, but I'd already committed. I arrived at Mancini's exactly at 8. It was an upscale Italian place with dim lighting and quiet corners perfect for discreet conversations. The hostess led me to a private booth in the back where a man in an expensive suit waited. He was maybe 50, with salt and pepper hair and cold blue eyes. When he smiled, it didn't reach those eyes. Miss Hartford. Thank you for coming. I'm Vincent. I slid into the booth across from him, trying to look nervous. It wasn't hard, I was genuinely terrified. You said you wanted to talk. Indeed. First, let me say that what happened with your father is unfortunate. He was a valued associate. His arrest has created certain complications for our business operations. I'm sorry, I said, keeping my voice small. I didn't mean to cause problems. He told me my mother was dead. When I found out she was alive, when I learned what he'd done to her, I couldn't just let it go. Understandable. Family loyalty is important. Though one might argue that your loyalty should have been to your father, not to a woman who abandoned you for 10 years. She didn't abandon me. She was protecting me from him. Vincent waved a hand dismissively. Semantics. What concerns my associates and I is what else you might know about your father's business activities. You mentioned money laundering in your very public accusation. What else did he tell you? Nothing. I swear. I recorded one drunken conversation where he bragged about moving money. That's all I know. I don't know who he worked with or how the money was moved or any details. I just knew he was doing something illegal and I wanted him to pay for what he did to my family. Vincent studied me carefully. You've been very cooperative with law enforcement. They asked me questions. I answered them. But I only know what I told them, that my father laundered money. I don't know anything about who else was involved. And you didn't access any of your father's files? His computer? His records? I shook my head, trying to look earnest and a little scared. No. I wouldn't even know what to look for. I'm not a criminal. I don't understand how any of this works. What about your mother? What has she told the FBI? She's been in witness protection for 10 years. Whatever she told them back then. I've barely even gotten to talk to her since the arrest. The FBI keeps us separated. This seemed to relax Vincent slightly. I see. Well, Miss Hartford, I appreciate your honesty. However, my associates remain concerned. Your very public accusations have drawn significant attention to your father's business dealings. Federal agents are now looking into all of his financial records, his properties, his associates. This creates problems for us. I'm sorry, I said again. But I didn't know it would become such a big deal. I just wanted justice for my mom. Justice is expensive, Miss Hartford. It costs people their freedom, their livelihoods, sometimes their lives. You've set in motion something that cannot be easily stopped. The FBI is investigating. Your father is cooperating in exchange for a reduced sentence. And you are the brave daughter who exposed it all, which makes you a public figure. A witness. Someone who could potentially testify if this goes to trial. My blood went cold. Testify? I don't know anything to testify about. Perhaps. But perception matters. And right now, you're perceived as someone who could be dangerous to our interests. Do you understand what I'm saying? Are you threatening me? Vincent smiled that cold smile again. I'm explaining reality. You have two options, Miss Hartford. Option 1, you disappear. You take some of that money you've apparently been hiding, yes, we know about your tech investments, and you go somewhere far away. You stop cooperating with the FBI. You refuse to testify if called. You make it clear that you've said everything you're going to say. In return, we ensure your safety and the safety of your mother. And option 2? Option 2 is much less pleasant. You continue down this path, continue working with law enforcement, continue being the brave whistleblower. And eventually, despite their best efforts to protect you, you have a tragic accident. Your mother has a tragic accident. Your friend Sarah has a tragic accident. These things happen to people who make themselves problems for organizations like ours. Every instinct screamed at me to touch my ear, to signal the FBI to move in. But Detective Wallace had been clear, we needed more. We needed him to be more explicit, to reveal more about the organization, to give us something concrete we could use. I forced myself to look scared. It wasn't difficult. How do I know you'll keep your word? If I disappear, how do I know you won't kill me anyway? You don't, Vincent said simply. But I can tell you this, we have no particular desire to hurt you. You're not our enemy. You're just a daughter who got caught up in her father's mess. If you remove yourself from the situation, there's no reason for us to waste resources on you. We have bigger concerns than one naive girl who got emotional about her mother. I need time to think about this. You have 48 hours. After that, we'll assume you've chosen option 2, and we'll act accordingly. He slid a business card across the table. This number reaches me directly. Call when you've decided. He stood up and left without another word. I sat there for a full minute, trying to calm my racing heart, before the FBI agents posing as other diners gave me subtle signals that it was safe to leave. Back at the safe house, Detective Wallace played the recording 3 times. This is good. He explicitly threatened you. He revealed that your father is cooperating with us. He confirmed that there's a larger organization. We can use this. He gave me 48 hours, I said, my voice shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. What happens in 48 hours if I don't call him? We protect you. That's what happens. But Emma, you did great. You got him talking. Now we need to push further. Further? He literally just threatened to kill me, my mom, and Sarah. And we recorded it. We have evidence. But we need more than one conversation with one mid-level guy. We need to identify the people at the top. Your father is giving us names, but we need concrete evidence against them. Financial records, recordings, something that will hold up in court. I felt sick. You want me to meet with him again? I want you to call him tomorrow and say you'll cooperate. Say you'll disappear. But before you go, you want to make sure your mother and Sarah will actually be safe. You want assurances. You want to meet with someone higher up in the organization. Someone who can guarantee their safety. And you think they'll agree to that? They might. You're not a criminal. You're a rich girl who's in over her head. They'll see you as manageable. And if they think they can control you, they'll want to meet you, to make sure you understand the stakes. Over the next 2 days, I barely slept. The plan was insane. I was supposed to call Vincent, tell him I'd cooperate, and then ask for a meeting with his bosses. The FBI would wire me again, record everything, and use it to build their case against the entire organization. It was dangerous and reckless and possibly suicidal. But it was also my chance to finish what I'd started. When I finally called Vincent's number, My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. "Miss Hartford," he answered. "I was hoping you'd make the smart choice." "I want to cooperate," I said. "I'll disappear. I'll stop talking to the FBI. But I need guarantees. I need to know that my mother and my friend will actually be safe. I gave you my word. No offense, but I don't know you. I don't know if your word means anything. I need to meet with someone higher up. Someone who can actually make these guarantees and have them mean something." There was a long pause. "You're asking to meet with people who don't generally meet with civilians." "I'm asking for assurance that agreeing to your terms won't just result in me disappearing and my family getting killed anyway. If I'm going to give up my entire life, I need to know it matters." Another pause. "Then, I'll make some calls. If they agree, you'll meet with them on their terms, at a location of their choosing." "And Miss Hartford? If this is some kind of trap, if you're wearing a wire or working with law enforcement, they will know. And everyone you love will die before you do. Do you understand?" "I understand." The call ended. I looked at Detective Wallace, who'd been listening on another line. Will they really be able to tell if I'm wearing a wire? These guys are professionals. They'll probably check. But we have contingency plans. Trust me. 3 days later, I received instructions for the meeting. A black car would pick me up from a specific intersection at midnight. I was to come alone, bring no phone, no bag, nothing but myself. I'd be searched. Any attempt at recording or communication would be met with immediate consequences. The FBI had to get creative. They couldn't wire me directly, I'd be searched. But they could plant a tracking device in the filling of my tooth during an emergency dental appointment. They could have agents follow the car from a distance. They could monitor the general area and be ready to move in at the first sign of trouble. It wasn't foolproof. It was barely even safe. But it was the best option we had. The night of the meeting, I said goodbye to my mother via video call. She was crying, begging me not to go. "Emma, please. We can disappear together. We can start over somewhere else. You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," I said gently. "Mom, these people will always be a threat. Running doesn't end that. The only way we're ever truly safe is if they're in prison. And that's what I'm going to make happen. What if you don't come back? Then you'll know I died doing everything I could to protect you and give us both a real future. But I will come back. I promise." At 11:45, I stood at the designated intersection in a quiet part of the city. At exactly midnight, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up. The back door opened. "Get in," a voice said from inside. I climbed in. There were 2 men in the back seat with me, both large and intimidating. One of them immediately started patting me down, searching for wires or weapons or phones. He found nothing, because there was nothing to find except the nearly invisible tracker in my tooth. "She's clean," he said. "Phones?" the other man asked. "Left at home, like you said." They put a hood over my head. The car started moving. I tried to keep track of turns and time, but it was impossible. We drove for what felt like an hour but might have been 20 minutes. When the car finally stopped and they removed the hood, we were in an underground parking garage. I had no idea where. They led me to an elevator, then down a hallway, then into a conference room that looked like it belonged in a corporate office building. Leather chairs, a long table, expensive art on the walls. Nothing about it screamed criminal organization. 3 people sat at the table. 2 men and 1 woman, all in business attire, all looking like they could be executives at any Fortune 500 company. But their eyes were cold. Calculating. Dangerous. The woman spoke first. "Miss Hartford. I'm told you want assurances before you agree to our terms. I want to make sure my cooperation actually means something. That my family will be safe. Your cooperation means you get to keep living, one of the men said bluntly. That should be sufficient motivation. I need more than threats, I said, trying to sound brave. I need actual guarantees. You're not in a position to negotiate, the woman said. Then kill me now and get it over with. Because I'm not disappearing based on vague promises from people I don't know. They exchanged glances. Finally, the woman sighed. Very well. Here are your guarantees. You will leave the country within 72 hours. You will not contact law enforcement. You will not testify in any proceedings against your father or any of his associates. In exchange, we will not harm you, your mother, or anyone else you care about. We will also ensure that your father's sentence is, shall we say, as comfortable as possible. He remains a valued former associate, after all. How do I know you'll keep that promise? You don't, the second man said. But consider this, we're a business. We don't waste resources on unnecessary violence. As long as you're not a problem for us, there's no reason to make you one. It's inefficient. What happens if I decide not to cooperate? The woman smiled, but it was terrifying. Then we kill you. We kill your mother. We kill your friend Sarah. We kill anyone you've ever cared about. And we make it look like accidents, suicides, random violence. The FBI can't protect you forever, Miss Hartford. Eventually, we'll get to you. So please, make the smart choice. I pretended to think about it, letting fear show on my face. Okay. I'll do it. I'll disappear. Just, please don't hurt my family. Wise decision, the woman said. You'll receive instructions within 24 hours on where to go and how to access funds for your new life. Don't deviate from those instructions. Can I ask one question? What? Why? Why go through all this? Why not just kill me and be done with it? The woman leaned back in her chair. Because killing the brave daughter who exposed her criminal father would create even more publicity. The FBI would investigate harder. The media would dig deeper. You're more useful to us alive and silent than dead and martyred. Plus, your father has been somewhat cooperative in ensuring certain sensitive information doesn't come to light. Call it professional courtesy to a former colleague. What sensitive information? That's not your concern. All you need to know is that as long as you keep your mouth shut and disappear, everyone stays safe. Are we clear? Crystal clear. They had the guards put the hood back on me and drive me back to the city. When they dropped me off, it was 3 in the morning. I walked 2 blocks before an unmarked FBI van pulled up and I climbed inside. Detective Wallace looked exhausted but triumphant. We got it all. The tracker worked perfectly. We recorded everything. Emma, you just got us confessions from 3 of the top people in this organization. Plus confirmation that your father is cooperating to protect specific information, which gives us leverage to push him harder. So what happens now? Now we move fast. We've got enough to get warrants. We're going to hit them simultaneously, arrest all of them at once before they can destroy evidence or flee. It's going to happen within 48 hours. I felt dizzy with relief and residual fear. And I don't have to actually disappear? No. You're done. You've given us everything we need. Now we do our job. The next 2 days were a blur of debriefings, meetings with prosecutors, and preparation for what the FBI was calling the largest organized crime takedown in a decade. They coordinated with multiple agencies, federal and local law enforcement, even international partners for suspects who'd fled overseas. On the morning of the arrests, I watched from a secure location as FBI agents simultaneously raided 15 locations across 3 states. They arrested 37 people, including Vincent and the 3 executives I'd met with. They seized financial records, computers, phones, documents. It was massive and thorough and devastating to the organization. My father, watching this unfold from his jail cell, apparently demanded to speak with me. The FBI allowed it, with strict supervision and recording. I sat across from him in the visitors' room at the Federal Detention Center. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his expensive suits and commanding presence. Prison orange didn't suit him. "You destroyed everything," he said flatly. 30 years of carefully built relationships, gone. People who trusted me, arrested. My entire life's work, erased. "Your life's work was crime," I replied calmly. "Your life's work was hurting people, including me and Mom. I'm not sorry for ending it." "They're going to kill me in here," he said. "You realize that? The people I worked with, the people I protected, they'll put a hit on me. I'm a dead man because of you. The FBI is moving you to a secure facility. You'll be in protective custody. You'll be safe." "Safe?" He laughed bitterly. "I'll be in a cage for the rest of my life because my own daughter betrayed me." "No, Dad. You'll be in a cage for the rest of your life because you committed crimes. Because you chose money and power over everything else, including your family. I didn't betray you. I held you accountable. There's a difference." He leaned forward, and for a moment I saw that dangerous flash in his eyes, the one that used to send me running to the basement in fear. "You think you've won. You think you're the hero of this story. But you're not. You're just a girl who destroyed her father and will spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, wondering if I managed to get a message out, if someone's coming for you." I met his eyes steadily. "The difference between us, Dad, is that I'm not afraid anymore. You taught me to be afraid my entire childhood. But facing you, facing your associates, facing everything you built? That taught me I'm stronger than my fear. So no, I'm not worried. Because even if you did manage to order a hit on me, even if someone does come after me someday, I'll face it the same way I faced everything else you threw at me. And I'll survive. Because that's what I do. I survive you." I stood up to leave. "Emma," he called after me. When I turned back, his expression was strange. Not quite remorseful, but something close. "For what it's worth, I am impressed. I underestimated you. I always thought you were weak, but you're not. You're exactly like me." "No, Dad," I said quietly. "I'm nothing like you. You destroyed people to build yourself up. I'm rebuilding what you destroyed. We're not the same." That was the last time I ever saw my father. He was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. Most of his associates got similar sentences. The organization was dismantled. And the FBI assured me that the threat against me and my family had been neutralized. 3 months after the arrests, my mother and I stood together at the grand reopening of what was now officially called the Catherine Hartford Foundation for Children's Education. The entire board had been replaced. Our mission statement had been rewritten. Our funding sources were completely transparent. And our first initiative was a scholarship program specifically for children of incarcerated parents. "You know," my mother said, looking at the crowd of supporters and the children who would benefit from the foundation, "I spent 10 years thinking I'd lost you forever. Thinking that leaving was the biggest mistake of my life." "It wasn't a mistake," I said. "It was survival. And it gave me the chance to become strong enough to end this." "You were always strong, Emma. I just didn't get to see it." Sarah joined us, holding a glass of champagne. "To Emma Hartford," she toasted. "Who took down an entire crime organization while also running a charity. Multitasking at its finest." We laughed. Real laughter, not the nervous, frightened kind I'd been living with for so long. For the first time in my entire life, I felt free. Free from my father's control, free from fear, free from the weight of secrets and lies. The foundation thrived. We helped thousands of children get access to education. I used my tech investment money to fund more programs, expand our reach, make a real difference. And every single day, I thought about the girl in the basement, locked away and invisible, and I was grateful that she'd found the strength to fight back. But this story doesn't end with a neat bow and a perfect happy ending, because real life isn't like that. 6 months after my father's sentencing, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph of me leaving my apartment that morning, taken from across the street. On the back, someone had written, "His reach is longer than you think." I called Detective Wallace immediately. The FBI investigated, but they found nothing. No fingerprints, no DNA, no way to trace where the photo had been developed or who'd sent it. It could have been a random threat from someone angry about the case. It could have been nothing. But it also could have been something. I increased my security. I varied my routes and schedules. I learned to look over my shoulder, to trust my instincts, to never assume I was completely safe. It was exhausting and paranoid, and exactly what my father had predicted would happen. But here's the thing he didn't understand: I could live with looking over my shoulder. What I couldn't live with was doing nothing while he hurt people, while he controlled me, while he got away with decades of crimes. I made my choice. I accepted the consequences. And I would make the same choice again. 1 year after the arrests, Sarah and I were having coffee at our favorite cafe when a man approached our table. He was young, maybe early 20s, with nervous energy and a backpack slung over his shoulder. "Emma Hartford?" he asked hesitantly. Every muscle in my body tensed. My hand moved toward my phone, ready to call for help. "Who's asking?" "My name is Tyler. You don't know me, but I wanted to thank you. My dad was one of the people arrested in your father's organization. He was a mid-level accountant, helped move the money around. And honestly? Thank you for getting him arrested." I blinked in surprise. That's not usually what people say. "Yeah, well, my dad was a piece of garbage who abused my mom for years. We thought we could never escape him because he had money and connections, and he told us he'd kill us if we tried to leave. But then he got arrested, and suddenly we were free. My mom divorced him. We moved to a new city. Started over. And it's all because you were brave enough to take down your own father. So, thank you. You saved more families than just your own." He left before I could respond. I sat there, stunned, as Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "See," she said softly. "Worth it." Maybe she was right. Maybe all of this, the fear, the danger, the ongoing paranoia, was worth it if it meant other families like Tyler's got their freedom. 2 years after the arrests, I woke up to breaking news: my father had died in prison. A heart attack, the reports said. Natural causes. He was 63 years old. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief or sadness or much of anything at all. Just a strange emptiness where all that fear and anger used to live. My mother came over that evening. We sat together on my couch, not really talking, just existing in the same space. Finally, she said, "Are you okay?" "I don't know," I admitted. I spent so many years being angry at him, being afraid of him, fighting against him. And now he's just gone. What do I do with all that energy now? "You keep living," she said. "You keep helping people through the foundation. You keep being brave and strong and everything he never wanted you to be. That's how you win, Emma. Not by destroying him, although that was necessary, but by building a life that proves you were always more than his worst expectations of you." The funeral was small. A few distant relatives I barely knew. Some former business associates who were either too stupid or too loyal to stay away. No real friends, because my father had never had those. Just contacts, pawns, people he used. I didn't deliver a eulogy. I didn't say any comforting lies about what a great man he was. I just stood there and watched them lower his casket into the ground, and I thought about the little girl locked in the basement, and how she'd grown up to bring down everything he'd built. 3 years later, the Catherine Hartford Foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd helped over 10,000 children get access to education. We'd expanded into job training for parents, addiction recovery programs, mental health services for families affected by incarceration. We were making a real difference. I'd also started speaking publicly about my experience. Not often, and never for money, but when organizations focused on domestic abuse or survivor advocacy asked me to share my story, I said yes. Because I realized that my story wasn't just about taking down a crime organization. It was about surviving an abusive parent, about finding your strength when you feel powerless, about fighting back against people who want to control and diminish you. At one of these speaking events, a woman approached me afterwards. She was maybe 40, with tired eyes and bruises she'd tried to cover with makeup. "I'm still living my version of your basement," she whispered. "But hearing you tonight, I think maybe I can find my way out too." I gave her the number for a domestic violence shelter. I connected her with resources. I followed up 3 months later and found out she'd left her abusive husband, gotten a restraining order, and was rebuilding her life with her 2 kids. That's when I realized what my mother had meant. This was winning. Not the dramatic takedown of my father, though that had been necessary. Not the arrests or the headlines or the public vindication. But this, helping other people escape their basements, literal or metaphorical. Using my experience, my strength, my resources to make sure other people didn't have to suffer the way I had. For years after my father's arrest, I finally took down the security cameras in my apartment. I stopped checking over my shoulder every time I left the house. I went on a date with a guy Sarah had set me up with, my first real date in years, and I actually enjoyed it instead of being consumed by paranoia. I was healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely healing. 5 years later, I stood in the ballroom of the same estate where this whole story began. We'd converted the property into the foundation's headquarters. The basement where I'd been locked up so many times was now a computer lab for underprivileged kids. The study where my father had made his corrupt deals was now my office. The ballroom where I'd exposed him was now used for fundraising events that actually helped people instead of laundering money. My mother worked there full-time as the foundation's director. Sarah had left her marketing job to become our communications director. We'd built something good out of the ruins of my father's empire. At our 5-year anniversary gala, I stood at the same spot where I'd played my father's recorded confession to a shocked crowd. But this time, I was talking about hope instead of revenge. About second chances. About how the children we'd helped were breaking cycles of poverty and incarceration in their families. About how the foundation had become exactly what my father pretended it was, a genuine force for good. 5 years ago, I said to the crowd, I stood in this room and exposed my father's crimes. It was one of the scariest things I've ever done. But it led to this, to an organization that's helped thousands of families, to justice for the people he hurt, to freedom for my mother and me. And if I had to do it all over again, I would. Because fighting back against the people who hurt you isn't just about revenge. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about making sure their legacy is one of justice, not suffering. It's about turning pain into purpose. The crowd applauded. Later, a young woman approached me, one of the first scholarship recipients from 5 years ago. She was in college now, studying social work, planning to dedicate her career to helping other kids like her. "You changed my life," she said simply. "I just wanted you to know that." That night, driving home from the gala, I passed the intersection where I'd been picked up by Vincent's car 5 years ago. The memory was still vivid, the hood over my head, the uncertainty, the fear. But I'd survived it. I'd faced down people who'd literally threatened to kill me, and I'd won. My father had been wrong about me my entire life. I wasn't weak. I wasn't worthless. I wasn't his greatest disappointment. I was his reckoning. I was the consequence of his cruelty. I was the end of his empire and the beginning of something better. And every single day, when I walked into the Foundation headquarters, the building that used to be his mansion, his throne, his symbol of power, I remembered the girl in the basement. The scared little girl who endured his punishment and his contempt. And I was grateful to her for surviving long enough to become me. The woman who fought back. The woman who won. The mysterious photograph from years ago never led to anything. Either it was an empty threat, or the person who sent it decided I wasn't worth the risk. Either way, I stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. I stopped living in fear of my father's ghost. Because here's what I finally understood, he'd already done his worst to me. He'd locked me in basements, destroyed my childhood, stolen 10 years with my mother, and tried to break my spirit. And I'd survived all of it. Whatever hypothetical future threats existed, they couldn't be worse than what I'd already endured and overcome. Now, 6 years later, I occasionally speak to criminology classes about my experience. I talk about the psychology of abuse, about how abusers maintain control, about how organizations exploit vulnerabilities. But I also talk about resilience. About finding strength you didn't know you had. About the moment you decide to stop being a victim and start being a survivor. Students always ask me if I regret it. If I wish I'd just taken the money and disappeared like Vincent suggested. If I think the danger and fear was worth it. My answer is always the same: I could have run. I could have spent the rest of my life hiding, looking over my shoulder, living in fear. Instead, I chose to fight. And yes, it was dangerous. Yes, it was terrifying. But now I wake up every morning in a world where my father and his associates are in prison. Where my mother is free. Where thousands of children have opportunities they wouldn't have had. So no, I don't regret it. Not for a second. The truth is more complicated than that, of course. There are nights when I still have nightmares. Moments when a car following too closely behind me triggers panic. Times when I wonder if I did the right thing, if the cost was too high, if I should have just disappeared and kept my head down. But then I think about Tyler, the young man whose abusive father got arrested in the sweep. I think about the woman who whispered about still living in her basement. I think about the thousands of children who've gotten scholarships, the families who've received support, the lives that have been changed by the foundation. And I know that even with all the fear, all the risk, all the ongoing vigilance, I made the right choice. My father spent his life building an empire of lies and crime and cruelty. He wanted to create a legacy of power and control. Instead, his legacy is his own destruction and the foundation that rose from the ashes of his empire, a foundation that helps the very people he would have exploited. He thought locking me in the basement would keep me contained, controlled, afraid. Instead, it taught me that I could survive in the dark. And when I finally came out of that basement for the last time, I brought enough light with me to expose every shadow he'd been hiding in. That's not revenge. That's justice. And it was worth every terrifying moment. As for the question everyone always asks, am I safe now? Do I still worry? The answer is complicated. The organization was dismantled. The key players are in prison. The FBI assured me years ago that the threat had been neutralized. But once you've lived through what I lived through, once you've looked real evil in the face and challenged it, you never fully let your guard down again. I'm not paranoid. I'm just aware. I know what people are capable of. I know that there might always be someone out there nursing a grudge, someone who blames me for their incarceration or their loss of income or their ruined empire. But I also know that I'm stronger than I was. I have resources now. I have people who care about me. I have the FBI's number on speed dial. And most importantly, I have the absolute certainty that I will never again be that powerless girl locked in a basement while her abuser throws a party above her head. That girl is gone. She survived long enough to become someone her father never imagined, his equal. His better. His end. And if someone does come for me someday, if one of my father's old associates or a family member seeking revenge shows up at my door, I'll handle it the way I handle everything now, by facing it head-on, by refusing to be intimidated, by fighting back with everything I have. Because I learned something important in that basement, during those long hours of darkness and fear and isolation, you're never truly powerless unless you choose to be. Even when someone locks you away, even when they try to make you invisible, even when they think they've broken you, you still have choices. You can submit, or you can survive. You can accept their narrative, or you can write your own. I chose to survive. I chose to write my own story. And that story isn't about being a victim of my father's abuse. It's about being the woman who ended it. 7 years after that night in the basement, I married the guy Sarah set me up with. His name is Marcus, and he's a public defender who spends his days fighting for people who can't afford their own lawyers. He understands my mission because he has one of his own. He knows about my past, about the nightmares that occasionally wake me up at 3 a.m., about the security system I insist on having even though the threat is supposedly gone. He doesn't judge. He just holds me when the memories get too heavy and reminds me that I'm not in that basement anymore. My mother walked me down the aisle. I wore a dress I chose myself, not one my father would have approved of. The ceremony was small and simple and full of people who actually loved me, not business associates and fake friends. We honeymooned in Greece, somewhere my father would never have let me go. I swam in impossibly blue water and ate food that tasted like freedom and laughed without wondering if someone was watching me, waiting to punish me for being happy. On our last night there, sitting on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, Marcus asked me, "Do you ever wish you'd made different choices? Taken the easier path?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I finally said. Because the easier path would have meant staying small, staying scared, staying controlled. And I'm done being any of those things. I'm done making myself smaller so other people feel bigger. I spent my entire childhood that way. I'm not spending my adulthood there too. Even if it means always looking over your shoulder? Even then. Because looking over your shoulder is just awareness. It's not the same as cowering. And I'll take awareness over submission any day. He kissed me then, and I felt something I'd never really felt before, peace. Not the absence of problems or threats or concerns, but the presence of certainty. Certainty that I'd made the right choices. Certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Certainty that the girl in the basement would be proud of who she became. We flew home a week later. I returned to my work at the foundation, to helping kids escape their own versions of my basement. Marcus returned to his work defending people who needed someone to fight for them. We built a life that mattered, a life that made a difference, a life that was ours. 8 years after everything started, I received an email from an unexpected source, my father's former lawyer. The subject line read, "Richard Hartford's final message." I almost deleted it without reading. Almost. But curiosity won out. The email explained that my father had written a letter before he died, instructing his lawyer to send it to me 8 years after his death. Why 8 years? I had no idea. Maybe he thought that was long enough for his words to matter again. Maybe it was just his way of maintaining some control even from beyond the grave. I stared at the attachment for 10 minutes before finally opening it. The letter was typed, precise, exactly like my father. "Emma, if you're reading this, I've been dead for 8 years. Long enough, I assume, for you to have built whatever life you think you deserve. I'm not writing to apologize. I made my choices and I stand by them, even knowing how they ended. You made yours. We're both living, or in my case, not living, with the consequences. But I want you to know something, I underestimated you. Fundamentally and completely. I saw weakness where there was strength. I saw compliance where there was rebellion brewing. I thought I could control you the way I controlled everything else in my life. I was wrong. You destroyed me more thoroughly than any of my enemies ever could have. You dismantled my empire, exposed my crimes, and turned my own legacy against me. That takes a special kind of strength. A special kind of ruthlessness, actually. In that way, you are exactly like me, whether you want to admit it or not. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even want it. But I do want you to understand that in the end, I was almost proud of you. Almost. Because you did what I always wanted to do, you won. Completely. Totally. You didn't just beat me, you erased me and built something better in my place. That's not revenge. That's mastery. So here's my final message to you, Emma, don't waste it. Don't waste the strength you discovered by pretending to be softer than you are. Don't waste the victory you earned by being generous to people who don't deserve it. You have power now. Real power. Use it the way I should have, wisely, ruthlessly, and without apology. Be the thing I never could be, powerful and good. If you can manage that, then maybe you really are better than me. Richard I read the letter 3 times. Then I called my mother. Did you know Dad wrote me a letter to be delivered after his death? I asked. No. What did it say? I summarized it for her. When I finished, there was a long silence. Finally, my mother said, he's still trying to manipulate you. Even from the grave. That's what this letter is. It's his final attempt to make you doubt yourself, to make you think you're like him. Maybe, I said. Or maybe he finally understood me at the end. Emma, you are nothing like your father. I know. But I do have some of his strength. Some of his determination. I just use it differently than he did. For good instead of evil. To build instead of destroy. That doesn't make me him, it makes me someone who learned from both his strengths and his failures. My mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you're right. And maybe that's the real victory. Not just that you beat him, but that you took the only good qualities he had and made them better. Made them yours. I never responded to the letter. There was no point. My father was dead, and his final words didn't change anything about my life or my choices or who I'd become. But I did keep the letter. Not because I agreed with it or because I wanted his approval, even posthumous approval. I kept it because it represented closure. My father finally saw me clearly at the end. He finally understood that I wasn't his disappointment or his victim. I was his successor in the only way that mattered. I took everything he'd built and made it better. 9 years later, the foundation celebrated another milestone. 50,000 children helped. 50,000 lives changed. 50,000 chances at education and opportunity that wouldn't have existed without the money I'd made, the courage I'd found, and the decision I'd made to fight back. At the anniversary event, I saw faces in the crowd that made everything worthwhile. Tyler, the young man whose father's arrest had freed his family, was there with his mother. The woman who'd approached me at that speaking event years ago was there with her 2 kids, all of them thriving. Dozens of scholarship recipients, now graduated and working, paying it forward by volunteering or donating or just being living proof that the cycle could be broken. Sarah gave a speech about the foundation's growth. My mother talked about the importance of second chances. And then it was my turn. I stood at the podium and looked out at all those faces. People who'd survived their own basements, their own versions of my father, their own seemingly impossible situations. People who'd fought back and won. 10 years ago, I was locked in a basement while my father hosted a party above me. I was invisible, powerless, trapped. And I made a decision that night that changed everything. I decided I was done being any of those things. I paused, making eye contact with different people in the audience. The journey from that basement to this moment wasn't easy. It was dangerous and terrifying, and there were so many times I wanted to give up, wanted to run, wanted to just accept that some people are too powerful to fight. But I didn't give up. I fought. And with help from people who believed in me, I won. But here's what I learned: winning isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. It's about making sure they can't hurt anyone else. It's about taking the power they stole from you and using it to lift up other people. It's about breaking the cycle instead of continuing it. My father spent his life taking from people, building himself up by tearing others down, using his power to control and manipulate and hurt. And when I finally beat him, I had a choice. I could become like him, using my power the same way he did. Or I could use it differently. Better. To help instead of hurt. To build instead of destroy. Every single person in this room is proof that I made the right choice. You're proof that fighting back matters. That standing up to abusers and criminals and people who think they're untouchable is worth it. That one person can make a difference if they're brave enough to try. So to everyone who's still in their basement, literally or metaphorically, you can get out. You are stronger than you know. And when you do get out, when you do fight back, when you do win, use that power to help others do the same. That's how we change the world. Not by becoming the people who hurt us, but by becoming everything they never wanted us to be: free, strong, and good. The applause was overwhelming. People stood. Some were crying. And I realized that this was my father's real legacy, not his crimes or his empire or his cruelty, but the thousands of lives that had been changed because I'd decided to fight back against him. He'd wanted to be remembered as powerful and important. Instead, he'd be remembered as the cautionary tale that inspired something better. That night, driving home with Marcus, I felt something settle in my chest. A sense of completion. Of having finally, truly, moved on. "You okay?" Marcus asked, noticing my expression. "Yeah," I said. I was just thinking about the last 10 years. Everything that happened. Everything I went through to get here. Any regrets? None, I said firmly. Not even the scary parts. Not even the nights I couldn't sleep because I was terrified someone was coming for me. Not even the trauma or the nightmares or any of it. Because all of that led to this. To 50,000 children getting help. To my mother being free. To me being free. To us. "You're amazing, you know that?" Marcus said. "I'm not amazing. I'm just someone who got tired of being afraid and decided to do something about it. But maybe that's what amazing is. Maybe it's not about being fearless or perfect or never making mistakes. Maybe it's about being scared and doing the hard thing anyway. About being broken and putting yourself back together stronger. About being trapped and finding your way to freedom, then going back to help others escape too." 10 years after that night in the basement, I stood in what used to be my prison and was now a computer lab full of kids learning skills that would change their lives. The concrete walls had been painted bright colors. The harsh lighting had been replaced with something warm and welcoming. The door that my father used to lock was now always open. One of the kids, a 10-year-old girl with familiar eyes that had seen too much too soon, approached me shyly. "Are you Miss Hartford?" she asked. "I am." "And you are?" "I'm Lily. My counselor told me you started this foundation. That you help kids like me." "Kids like you?" "Kids whose dads aren't good people." My heart broke a little. "Yes. I help kids like you. Because I was a kid like you once." Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Really. My dad was not a good person either. He hurt people. He hurt me. And for a long time, I thought there was nothing I could do about it. But you did do something, Lily said. My counselor told me you got him arrested. I did. It was scary and it was hard, but I did it. Because I realized that being scared of him was worse than fighting back. Were you really scared? Terrified, I admitted. But I did it anyway. Lily thought about this for a moment. My dad scares me too. But my mom got us away from him. She brought us here. She says we're safe now. You are safe now, I promised. And you're going to be okay. More than okay. You're going to be amazing. She smiled, and I saw in her face what I hoped other people saw in mine: resilience. Strength. The knowledge that surviving something terrible doesn't define you, what you do with that survival does. As Lily went back to her computer, I thought about the girl I'd been at her age. The girl locked in the basement, terrified and alone, certain that she'd never escape her father's control. If I could go back and talk to that girl, I'd tell her everything that was coming. I'd tell her about the fear and the danger and the seemingly impossible task of fighting back against someone so much more powerful. But I'd also tell her about the victory. About standing in a courtroom watching her father get sentenced. About the foundation that would rise from the ashes of his empire. About the thousands of lives that would be changed. About finding love and peace and freedom on the other side of that fear. I'd tell her that being locked in a basement doesn't mean you're powerless. It just means you're not free yet. And freedom is worth fighting for. I'd tell her to hold on. To survive. To wait for her moment. And when that moment came, to be brave enough to take it. Because 10 years later, standing in that basement-turned-computer lab, watching children learn and grow and become their best selves despite their worst circumstances, I knew beyond any doubt that every terrifying moment had been worth it. My father locked me in a basement to hide me away, to punish me, to make me invisible. Instead, he gave me the perspective I needed to see him clearly. To understand that his power was just an illusion, maintained only by the fear of people like me. And once I stopped being afraid, his empire fell in less than 6 months. That's the thing about abusers, about criminals, about anyone who builds their power on other people's fear. They're only powerful as long as we let them be. The moment someone stands up, the moment someone fights back, the moment someone says no more, their whole house of cards starts to collapse. I was that person for my father. I hope Lily will be that person for hers. And I hope that every child who walks through our foundation's doors learns the same lesson I did: you are not powerless. You are not worthless. You are not invisible. You are a survivor. And survivors can do anything. Even destroy their father's criminal empire while locked in a basement. Even turn that basement into a place of learning and growth. Even take the worst thing that ever happened to them and use it to help thousands of other people. Even win. Because in the end, that's what this story is really about. Not revenge or justice or dramatic takedowns, though those all happened. It's about a girl who was taught to be small and silent and scared, who decided to be big and loud and brave instead. It's about taking your power back from the people who stole it. It's about refusing to let your past define your future. It's about turning pain into purpose, trauma into triumph, fear into fuel for change. And it's about understanding that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's becoming so much more than the people who hurt you ever wanted you to be. My father wanted me to be nothing. Invisible. Controllable. Weak. Instead, I became the woman who ended his reign, freed my mother, helped 50,000 children, and built a life full of meaning and purpose and love. So no, I don't regret any of it. Not the fear, not the danger, not even the nights I spent locked in that basement wondering if I'd ever escape. Because I did escape. And then I made sure that basement could never trap anyone again. That's not just revenge. That's victory. And it was worth every single second.